Hello and welcome to Tech Cubicle on SAP. I am Daryl Griffiths and this is my weekly 180 where I spend 180 seconds on the latest techie news that impacts the world of SAP. At the end, I'll pick my favourite to review in a little more detail in the cubicle. In my SAP techie news this week, missed from last week's 180 due to the amount of AI related news, is the release of SAP Kernel Stack 754 patch level 300. This release includes a number of new parameters, including some for HTTP2, some parameter default value changes ranging from SAP ASE database related parameters to HANA to ICM, plus new kernel-side support features for OpenID Connect, OIDC. OIDC is used, for example, when you sign into a third-party website using your Google account or Facebook account. I've put the link in the description down below to both the help page and also the related SAP note, which is 3429944. Also last week, it was a busy week. The SAP BTP ABAP Environment is now supported to be deployed onto Google Cloud. This means that all three major hyperscalers are now supported to host your BTP ABAP environment. One item to note is the wording regarding EU access on the regions page of the Help for BTP ABAP Environment. It says, "We currently cannot guarantee EU access in the ABAP environment. If your contract includes EU access, we cannot move services to the ABAP environment without changing your contract." This means that if you have a BTP contract that restricts data processing to European locations only, it's a GDPR thing, then that is not possible with the BTP ABAP environment, so just be aware. From hackernews.com, a new CPU vulnerability called GhostRace is mentioned, which is similar in nature to the Spectre version 1.0 vulnerability from back in 2018. These form of vulnerabilities allow attackers with access to run malicious instruction chains against a vulnerable CPU, inducing a certain set of features in the architecture of the CPU that allow the attacker to bleed data from the CPU to which the attacker's session should not have access. Vulnerable systems could be running multiple virtual machines for different customers, with one of those virtual machines being the attacker's. Last time this sort of vulnerability was found, it resulted in large-scale firmware patching which required a reboot. Running SAP systems in public cloud becomes tricky in these scenarios because without the correct setup, your whole system could be down unless you have correctly forced the spread of the system across multiple physical hosts. Microsoft have announced when leaving Azure, you can now request free data transfer out. Back in January, episode 1 of the weekly 180, Google announced the same, and I questioned if this would spur on Microsoft and AWS, and it would appear it has. Customers will only stand to benefit from changes like this. An article by SAP on the circular economy this week provides some insight into the use of SAP technology and SAP products to improve the end-to-end CO2 cost of manufactured products, in the hope of improving the pitiful global 7.2% recycling rate. Finally, AWS announced that the AWS Launch Wizard now supports S4HANA Foundation and S4HANA 2023. The AWS Launch Wizard provides a simple and automated deployment of specific SAP application versions in single-node, distributed, and high availability patterns. The link is in the description down below. My favourite item this week is the article by SAP on the circular economy. The article talks about the use of SAP software products to improve the reuse of materials used in manufacturing and goods production around the world. One point in the article is the use of SAP Green Token to prove the provenance of raw materials. Reading further, the SAP Green Token is able to provide a historical record of raw materials through to end goods by creating a digital twin to represent the physical material, with that information stored as a token on blockchain. Now, I don't know how many others might be raising their eyebrows at that last part, but this is what I think. Using technology such as blockchain with its high CO2 cost to track the greenness of another product just seems a little bit nonsensical to me. The use of the blockchain in this scenario is to prove that the records have not been tampered with. Nobody can go back in time and manipulate the blockchain to change the origin of certain raw materials to make them appear to be sourced from locations with greener credentials. It is assuming that no one party in the process chain is trusted. This is something that is definitely needed. Imagine a raw material producer enters the sales data onto the blockchain, then the manufacturer enters the quantity purchased and the manufacturing processes used. Then finally the goods are sold with the sales information entered onto the blockchain. The end retailer can even enter when the product is sold to an end consumer, with potential for that product to be returned for recycling at the end of its life. When the product is returned, the complete material makeup is known from the blockchain records, allowing a specific recycling process to be used. More importantly, the whole chain can prove where they sourced the raw materials. Or can they? Can the same proof of origin be accomplished without using blockchain? The fundamentals of blockchain technology are that it is a distributed and decentralized ledger. No single body controls it, so nobody can delete it or recreate it or manipulate it without the whole chain being impacted. In my mind, the blockchain is a little bit like a long communal clothesline stretched across between two high-rise buildings. People fill the clothesline from one end, and each item sits next to the last item that was hung on the line. There's no facility to hang any clothing anywhere else on the line. Anyone that tries to mess about with the clothing is working in plain sight of all neighbours who can view the clothesline. If one item of clothing is swapped or manipulated, there will be a gap. No one neighbour controls the clothesline and everyone knows the rules of the clothesline. Okay, it's not an impervious analogy, but that's how I imagine it. The blockchain relies on accurate information being entered and no manipulation. One alternative to a decentralized blockchain is a centralized one, a blockchain just for one company to use, something like the AWS Quantum Ledger database. This doesn't quite sit right with me, because the trust is then placed on one company to enter the details of each step, unless they each have their own QLDB, for example. If they each had their own, then that is only going to emit ever more CO2, is it not? Even Amazon suggests that a public, decentralized blockchain may be better if the transactions involve multiple untrusted parties. My thoughts on this subject are that we do need to start somewhere, and recording of data is a good start. The problem is the technology is going to hamper our cause here. Maybe we need a global blockchain that is powered by 100% renewable sources of energy and has sufficient capacity for such a task, instead of each company or individual having their own solution. Maybe the future involves us working more as a community rather than individuals. As always, reference links are in the description down below. Drop me a comment, give the video a thumbs up, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and always wash your hands after leaving the cubicle. Bye bye.